My wife asked me a question 3 years ago, and I gave her the wrong answer. She died 4 months later, and I have not gotten through a single day since without going back to that morning. Not to the loss of her, that's its own thing, but to the specific moment, to the specific question, what she was really asking, and the answer I chose to give instead of the true one. My name is Frank. I'm 78 years old. And I've been sitting with this long enough that I need to say it out loud. There's a moment I'll come back to, a Tuesday morning in February, a kitchen table, 5 words she said that I already knew the answer to. I'll get there. But before I do, I need you to understand the 44 years that made it what it was. Because the moment by itself is just sad. With everything behind it, it becomes something harder to put down. Something, I suspect, you may recognize. You probably believe the same thing I believed, that the important things can wait, that the real conversation can happen later, that meaning, the named, spoken, given to another person kind, can be postponed the same way you postpone a difficult email or a phone call you don't quite have the energy for. I'm not saying you're careless. I'm saying the story is persuasive. It was persuasive to me for most of my life. 3 years ago, I found out what it cost. Margaret and I met in 1976. She was 24, teaching 2nd grade at an elementary school across town. I was 26, working a line at the Crestwood plant, the same as my father had, and his father before him. We weren't exceptional people. Small house, long mortgage, 2 kids, a son named Daniel, a daughter named Claire, and the particular rhythm that builds over decades in a long marriage, where you stop consciously deciding how to be with each other and simply become it, where the relationship stops being something you tend and starts being something you inhabit, like a room you've lived in so long you've stopped seeing it, the walls, the light, the way the floor creaks near the kitchen door. You stop noticing. Not because you stopped caring, because it became the ground under your feet. I want to say clearly, the love was real. We raised our children and buried both our fathers and stayed together through the hard years and the quiet years and the years that were neither. We were steady, but there were things I had always meant to say to her. Not declarations, not romantic speeches, just the specific, particular, true things, the version that named exactly what she had been to me in exactly the way it was true. I thought about saying them more than she ever knew. I'd almost say something after dinner and then let the moment pass. I'd think about it on the drive home, turning the words over, almost getting to the shape of them. I'd think, this weekend, when things slow down, when it feels right and not forced, when neither of us is tired. The right moment, in my mind, had requirements. It couldn't follow any kind of friction, even minor. It needed to feel natural, not arranged, not deliberate. I was waiting for a moment that didn't feel like I'd been preparing for it. I don't think that moment ever existed. Moments like that don't arise. You make them or you don't. And the belief that I would eventually make it was enough, every single day, to let me off the hook for one more day. That's how it works. That's how it compounds. I want you to stop for a second and think about this week, not abstractly, specifically. The phone call you've been meaning to make to your father that you keep telling yourself you'll make on the weekend when you have more time and less noise. You picked up the phone twice and put it down. Not because you don't want to call, because it didn't feel like the right moment for the real conversation, the one underneath the surface one. The thing you've wanted to say to your wife or your husband that you haven't said yet because it feels too large, or you're not sure how to start, or the evening was already going sideways and it didn't feel right. Your son or your daughter, when did you last tell them in spoken words, not gestures or presence or the assumption that they must know, but in actual words, what they mean to you? Not a quick hug on the way out the door, a sentence, the specific one. The apology that's been sitting in your chest for years for something that still comes up when things go quiet. The oldest friend you used to talk to every week, who you now think about often, but speak to almost never. And every time his name comes up on your phone, you feel something small and don't answer it. You saw the notification. You thought, later, when I have the time to do it properly. That is the exact thought I had for 44 years. And from the inside, it doesn't feel like avoidance. That's what I couldn't see. It feels like wisdom, like knowing you don't force these things, like patience, like being the kind of person who waits for the moment to feel right before they speak. Here is what it actually is. Time doesn't feel like it's running out when you're inside it. It feels like there's always more of it, just behind the next day. You don't notice it changing. The doors in your life don't slam. They close the way a door closes, when the wind just catches it quietly while you're in another room. You don't hear it happen. You just arrive one day and find them shut. One almost conversation became the habit of almost conversations. One evening I thought about saying it and didn't, became 1,000 evenings. One not tonight became the pattern. One we'll get to it this weekend became something I stopped saying out loud, but kept believing anyway, the way you keep believing things you've long since stopped examining. That's how 44 years went by. And then Margaret got sick. The winter of 2021. What we were told at first was that it was manageable, treatable. Those two words, manageable, treatable, are very good at making a frightening thing feel like a project with steps. So that's what I made it. I kept the appointments, filled the prescriptions, drove her to every consultation. I threw myself into the logistics of it because doing things had always been how I showed love, and because it gave me somewhere to put the fear that I didn't know what else to do with. But something shifted in her during those months. She became quieter in a way I hadn't seen before. Not sadder, more still, like she had arrived somewhere and was paying careful attention to it. I'd catch her looking at nothing in particular, with an expression I didn't have a word for, like she was listening to something just out of range. I should have asked her what she was hearing. I kept not asking. Then one Tuesday in February, she came home from an appointment. I was standing in the kitchen. She walked in, and instead of sitting in her own chair, she sat in mine. In 44 years, she had never done that. She looked at me for a long moment. Something in her face had changed. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't soft. She was very clear, in the way people get clear when they have stopped waiting for you to come to them on your own. She said, "Frank, have we said everything we needed to say?" That was it. I knew what she was asking. I want to be absolutely clear about that. I understood the question the moment she asked it. I knew what she meant, and I knew what the true answer was, and I knew what the right response would have been. The one she was waiting for, the one she had probably been waiting for far longer than that morning. I chose a safer answer. I said something about how she was going to be fine, reassuring, slightly beside the point. I moved the conversation away from the edge she was standing on, the way I had moved every conversation away from every edge for 44 years, and she let me, the way she had always let me. She died in June, 4 months. I have not gotten through a single morning without going back to that kitchen. The way she sat in my chair, the way she looked at me before she spoke, like she was deciding whether I was going to be brave enough. The exact words she chose, so plain, so patient, so precisely the right question to ask the person who had been almost saying things to her since 1976. Have we said everything we needed to say? We hadn't. I hadn't. There's a man on my street named Gerald, retired school teacher. His wife is alive, still sharp, still laughing at his jokes the way she has for 50 years. I see them on their evening walks. He opens the gate for her. She touches his arm when she's talking. And I watch them, and I wonder, does he know what he's walking next to? Not that he loves her, I'm certain he knows that. But does he say the specific thing? Does he sit across from her on an ordinary Tuesday night, nothing special happening, no occasion, and say the particular true version of what she has been to his life, in the words only he could say that are only true of her? Not because she asked, not because the moment presented itself, just because it's true, and she's there, and he still can. Or does he do what I did? He shows up. He drives her to her appointments. He handles things when things need handling. He demonstrates it in 100 practical ways, and trusts that she knows the rest, that she can read it in the 44 years of evidence. That's what I told myself, that Margaret knew, and she did know in the general sense. I'm certain of that. But knowing in the general sense is not the same as having heard it said. It's not the same as having the specific words given to you plainly by the person you've spent your life with, while there's still time to take them in. Nothing we don't say is obvious. I'm telling you this, and I know what's happening on your side of it. You're nodding. You think you understand what I mean. And you probably do in this moment while you're watching. And you'll think about it for the rest of today, maybe into tomorrow morning. And then the week will resume. Something will need handling. Someone will need something from you. And the conversation you've been meaning to have will settle back to where you've been keeping it, in the place where you keep the things you'll get to when the time is right. When did you last say the specific true thing to the person who most needs to hear it from you? Not "I love you." That's become reflex. It costs nothing by now. It passes between people like a greeting. The specific thing, the sentence that names exactly what they have been to your life in the way that's only true of them, that only you could say, that they will not hear from anyone else on earth. When? What has to happen first? What condition has to be met before you decide the moment is finally right enough? What are you waiting for to feel different than it feels right now? Because I had an answer to that question for 44 years. My answer was soon. When things settle, when it comes up naturally, when I find the right words and the right moment, and there isn't something else in the way. I know how that ends. This is the thing nobody prepares you for about time. It doesn't feel like it's running out. That's the particular cruelty of it. It feels abundant. It feels like there's always more of it just behind the next ordinary week. You don't feel it thinning. You don't notice the change. The doors in your life don't slam. They close the way a door closes when the wind just catches it quietly while you're in another room. You don't hear it. You just arrive one day and find them shut, and there's no key. There's no other door into the same room. That's where I am now. The house is quiet in the mornings. I sit at the kitchen table, my chair. I look across at hers. 3 years and I haven't moved it. I've thought about it. I've stood next to it, with my hands on the back of it, and I haven't moved it. I don't know what that is. Grief, probably, or the particular stubbornness of someone who is still not quite ready to let the shape of things change. Or maybe just habit, the habit of looking across a table and knowing someone is supposed to be there. I'm not going to tell you what to do with any of this. I don't think it works that way. I don't think you can hear something like this and turn it into a plan. I think it either lands or it doesn't. I think some true things don't become useful. They just sit with you, quietly, and change the quality of the light in the ordinary days you have left. Margaret asked me if we'd said everything we needed to say. I knew the answer. I don't know who you're thinking about right now. I don't know what's been waiting to be said in your house between you and whoever it is you haven't quite spoken to yet. But I think you know exactly who I mean. And I think the right moment was probably last Tuesday, and the Tuesday before that, and the one before that.